Do you ever feel overwhelmed by the ever-changing world of technology? Tech It Out can help make some sense of it all. Breaking down geek speak into street speak, technology columnist, author, and TV personality Mark Saltzman covers consumer technology each week for every listener. Mark tackles the latest news, reviews, and how-tos to help you understand what's hot, what's not, and why.
Hey everyone, welcome to Tech It Out, your weekly guide to what's hot, what's not, and why in the world of technology, and in a language you can understand. This week, though, it isn't a review of any new gadgets or how to master them for a change, but rather we've got 3 interviews lined up that I think you'll really like. In a moment from now, we'll chat with movie screenwriter Garry Whitta, who penned a number of huge sci-fi films. He even co-wrote Star Wars Rogue One. How cool is that? He'll tell us what tech he uses to write screenplays and offer some tips to starting out on your own. We'll also learn this hour about a new dog leash that's fully lit up so you're visible at night. And we'll learn about the new Tankee video service for young gamers. All of this and more on today's Tech It Out. First, a quick shout out to my sponsor. Tech It Out is brought to you by ASUS, creating technology for today and tomorrow's smart life. ASUS, for those in search of incredible. Visit asus.com/US/radio for more info. That's asus.com/US/radio. As a movie screenwriter, how awesome would it be to have your screenplays turned into films with such esteemed actors speaking your lines, ranging from the likes of Denzel Washington and Gary Oldman to Mila Kunis and Will Smith? And then, if that wasn't the highlight of your career, co-writing a Star Wars flick, no less. Well, my next guest is Garry Whitta, and he used to edit computer gaming magazines. And yes, I've written for Garry many moons ago, and now he's a sought-after screenwriter, author, and also a game designer. Welcome to the show, Garry.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I know part of your history, as I mentioned, your magazine editing days, but how and why did you become a movie screenwriter?
You know, I always say I've been very, very fortunate that I got to do professionally the 2 things that I grew up loving as a hobby as a kid. I grew up loving movies and video games. And I always told myself if I got to do just one of those, that would be a thrill and better than anything I could hope for. And just through happenstance or luck or good, I don't know what you call it. They say it's better to be lucky than good. I certainly have been lucky. Whether or not I'm good is for other people to judge. But I managed to have 2 consecutive careers. One as a video games journalist, and then following on from that as a screenwriter. And it brought me here. I grew up in the UK, but the video game job, the magazine job, brought me to the US. And once I was in California, I was able to kind of take seriously a little bit more the whole business of kind of knocking on Hollywood's door. And I wrote a lot of screenplays. Each one kind of slightly less horrendous than the last, until I had one that I thought was good enough to show to people. Got a manager that liked the script, and kind of started from there.
Amazing. You're being too modest. Now, it does sound like one of those long shot careers, but you did score big with The Book of Eli, then co-writing After Earth with M. Night Shyamalan, of all people, and then co-writing, again, Star Wars Rogue One, which was one of my favorite of the recent Star Wars films. Did you ever think you would have those kinds of projects under your belt at such an early stage in your screenwriting career?
With Eli, which is the first movie I had made, I always felt like when that was done, I'd be happy to kind of go back to my old civilian life. Like, just that one is, how many times do you want to win the lottery before you're satisfied? I felt like I had won the lottery. I had a little screenplay that I had written just because I really wanted to hear myself tell the story to myself. It wasn't really anything I realistically expected to be made into a movie at any level, let alone the level that they made it at, $80 million budget with Oscar-winning actors. And so when that was made, I remember the first time I saw the movie finished in the edit bay, I cried a little bit because I was so taken by the fact that, oh my God, I did it. The thing that I always wanted to do since I was a young kid. I made the movie, or someone else made the movie for me, I should say. And they realized it at a level far beyond anything I ever imagined possible, Denzel and all of that great stuff. And it really was remarkable. And not only did they make it, they did the one thing that they do least often in Hollywood, which was shoot the script that I wrote. It changed very little. Oftentimes in Hollywood, you get fired off of a movie, they bring in other writers and they radically change it. And by the time the movie is made, your name may still be on it, but you don't really recognize the movie you wrote anymore. That was not the case with Eli. They really did shoot the movie that I wrote, and I considered that a little miracle. And so all of the success and the other movies that I've had made since then, I consider that a bonus. Eli alone was enough for me.
I'm not sure if you remember, Garry, but when I was writing for you at PC Gamer, or maybe it was PC Accelerator magazine, you emailed me a Tomb Raider script that you wrote as a fan, and that was before there were Tomb Raider movies. And I remember thinking after reading it, like, wow, what amazing talent. Do you remember writing that script, and do you still have it?
I do, and I don't know if I still have it. I do remember writing it. The funny thing is I did exactly the sort of thing that I now tell people not to do, which is don't write fan fiction, don't write in established franchises. As someone who's now in the Star Wars family of creators, I get a lot of emails and a lot of questions from people who come up to me at conventions and events and writing conferences and things like that, telling me, oh, I've got a great idea for a Star Wars movie. Is there some way that I could get Lucasfilm to pay attention to? And the answer is no, unfortunately. They really tend to only kind of work with people that they already know and trust, and they generate a lot of their own ideas internally. I always tell people, do what George Lucas did. George Lucas wanted to make a Flash Gordon movie, but he couldn't get the rights. And so instead of going away and making his own Flash Gordon fan film, he created something original of his own that channeled the stuff that he loved about Flash Gordon, this kind of old-fashioned space adventure, and created Star Wars. So I always tell people, be like George, create something original.
I guess it's easier to take established characters where you already know their personalities and the relationships with other characters and start that way rather than from scratch, like flashing cursor on the screen. So maybe that's why a lot of people write fan fiction first.
Maybe so. I mean, you're always going to start with a flashing cursor on the screen and the terror of the blank page no matter what you do. I understand the appeal of writing for, Luke Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi and Han Solo and Princess Leia and characters where you already kind of feel like you know the voice and you have something to write to. But it is, as a business proposition, it is unfortunately kind of a waste of time. If you just want to do it as a hobby, just to kind of practice your writing and just indulge the thrill for yourself of writing for Luke Skywalker, even in just the confines of your own imagination, by all means do that. Just know that work's unlikely to go anywhere. We see Star Wars and more often Star Trek fan projects getting shot down all the time because you have to understand you don't own those assets. You're playing with someone else's toys. Right. Someone else paid $4 billion for those toys. You don't just get to come along and play with them just because you feel like it. So I advise you to go away and create your own $4 billion toy. And like I said, do what George did and create something original.
Speaking of Star Wars, do you remember where you were when you landed the Rogue One gig? Tell us about it.
I remember where I was when I heard that Disney bought Lucasfilm. I was standing in line at a Popeye's fried chicken. And it was the news that Disney had acquired Lucasfilm for $4 billion and that there was going to be an episode 7, 8, 9 and more films. And I believe at the time the only thing that was announced was that the writer Michael Arndt had been announced to write episode 7. This is before JJ. JJ wasn't announced at that moment. He came a little bit later. Mm-hmm. And literally while I was still online at the Popeyes, I remember calling my agent and saying, look, I'm sure your phone is ringing off the hook right now with calls from all of your clients, but you got to get me in that room. The 10-year-old kid inside of me will never let me hear the end of it if I don't try to get in on a Star Wars gig. And of course, I imagined that I never really would. I'm a writer of some notoriety, I guess. People in Hollywood know who I am, but when it comes to Star Wars, where you have the luxury of being able to attract top level talent, basically anyone you want, JJ, Ryan, just people who are absolutely at the top of their game. Lucasfilm can take their pick. So I imagine I might be like, if they had a list of 100 writers, I might be lucky to be on it at all. And if so, I'd probably be like 97 or 98. Maybe they'll get around to me when I'm a very old man. But they did call me. They asked me to come in. I think they liked Eli and they liked some of my other work. And I sat with them and talked. And there was a lot of meetings. I sat with Kiri Hart and Rain Roberts from Lucasfilm Story Group and had a very general meeting. Came back in and met with John Knoll, who is the ILM legend who came up with the original idea for the story for Rogue One. Then I would meet Kathy, and then I'm suddenly sitting in a Disney boardroom with Alan Horn and some of the top people at Disney. And after all those meetings and all those interviews, they eventually said, "You're good to go. Let's start writing a movie." And it was right up until the point where I actually sat down in the office at Lucasfilm. I never really believed that it was real because I so desperately wanted the job, and I felt like any one of these meetings I might have a Larry David moment and say the wrong thing and get myself fired before I even started. But somehow I still you'd have to ask them why they hired me. I still can't tell you. But I said something right in one of those meetings, and they gave me the job.
It's an amazing story. Did they commission, say, 10 or 20 of you to write it, and then they would pick the best? Because I can imagine they have the budget to do something like that.
Some studios do that with big movies, and they certainly do often interview lots and lots. I mean, I don't know how many other writers they might have interviewed on Rogue One. I wasn't aware of any. I imagine they had a list, and they spoke to more people than just me in doing their due diligence to find the best writer. That's pretty much it. There were, obviously other writers on the film after me. There were 4 credited writers on the film, myself included. But it doesn't. You tend not to work in parallel. You work more consecutively. It's more like a relay race. Yeah. I take the script. I worked very closely with Gareth Edwards and with John Knoll, who, as I said, came up with the original idea for the movie, and with Lucas from Story Group, who are some very, very smart people. And I took the script about as far as I could possibly take it, and then you kind of hand the baton on to the next guy who comes in and takes over. That was Chris Weitz. And then Chris eventually handed off to, what's his name, Tony Gilroy, who finished it up. And what you see on the finished screen is the product of all of those writers all contributing, their piece of it.
Very interesting. Thanks. We're chatting with Garry Whitta. He is, of course, the celebrated screenwriter behind films like The Book of Eli, After Earth with M. Night Shyamalan, as well as Star Wars Rogue One. Before we move on and talk about technology, is it true that you turned down adapting Ernest Cline's stellar book, Ready Player One, into the feature? Tell us about it.
It's not strictly true to say that I turned it down because I was never formally offered the job. But what happens is I get sent books and things to adapt all the time. The sad state of affairs in Hollywood, unfortunately, these days is that this is why I was felt so privileged and so lucky that the Book of Eli got made as an original film at that level, like an $80 million original film that's not based on any pre-existing comic book or novel or video game or a remake of a TV show or an earlier film. That's very, very rare in Hollywood. Like, go look at the box office charts right now. You'll mostly see sequels and remakes and adaptations of other things. Hollywood is a very kind of parasitic industry. It kind of feeds off the success of things that have already been successful in other mediums, because in this business over here, we tend to be very risk averse.
No doubt. We'll continue our chat with Garry Whitta when we return on Tech It Out.
Listen to Tech It Out whenever you want. Find the Tech It Out podcast at iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to Tech It Out. We're chatting with successful screenwriter Garry Whitta, and he's going to share with us what tech he uses to write movies, whether it's apps or gear, to write flicks like Star Wars Rogue One. But before the break, I was asking you, Garry, about Ready Player One. You were asked if you wanted to adapt the book into a movie, but didn't accept it. Please continue telling us about that.
So with Ready Player One, that was an example of what my day job mostly looks like, which is, would you be interested in adapting this? Would you be interested in remaking that? We'll send you a copy, or we'll send you a disc of the movie that we want to remake, or we'll send you a copy of the book that we want to adapt. And one time they sent me Ready Player One. I can't remember if it had already been published at that point or if it was still kind of in galley stage, pre-publication. Mm-hmm. But they sent it to me, and I think they sent it to me because they knew my background was in video games and I might be someone that could speak to that world. And I read the book and I enjoyed it, but I remember thinking, with all the different references, Back to the Future and Ghostbusters and Star Wars and Star Trek and all of these things, it just kind of felt like an impossibility to make to me, to be able to put all those things in the film. And I remember saying to them, I don't think this is going to get made, because with all of this stuff that you're playing with here, the only way you could really make this is if you somehow got Steven Spielberg to direct it. Good luck with that. And then, of course, that's exactly what they went away and did. So everyone has a story about that. When I was working with Will Smith on After Earth, he told me about how he turned down the part of Neo in The Matrix, which he kind of regrets having. Like, I think he would have liked to have done, because you read the script and you're like, really? Seriously? This doesn't seem like this could work as a movie. But they made it work. Obviously, The Matrix is an amazing film. And, we all have those little kick yourself moments when the film comes out and it's really great and you go, oh, I could have done that. So that's mine, I guess.
Yeah, but if you didn't have Star Wars under your belt, then I could see you really kicking yourself. But, at this point, you can walk into any room now and,
Well, I could work in this business for 50 more years and write 50 more projects. And I don't think it's hard for me to imagine anything that's going to knock Rogue One off like kind of first position on my bio. If you go to my Twitter account and look at the list of projects that I've worked on, Rogue One is number one. And I can't imagine what would ever supplant it, because it really
is from there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and certainly from the point of view, again, of the 10-year-old kid that used to freeze his Han Solo figure in the freezer so that he could defrost his carbonite chamber, and all the little things that I did, the kid, that kind of 11-year-old kid that cried at the end of Return of the Jedi because I was just so overwhelmed by the emotion of it. Star Wars was such a big part of my life that to have a chance to write not just something like Star Wars, but actual Star Wars, and to help kind of perpetuate that myth making for a new generation of kids. I mean, I had people coming up to me after the Rogue One premiere, kind of misty-eyed, saying, "Oh my God, that it just made me feel like the first time I ever saw a Star Wars movie all over again." And it got me misty-eyed as well, because all our Star Wars fans together, we all kind of feel that same thing. We all come from that place of love that we love the original movies, and we want to honor them going forward. And I'm just really, really glad and very, very relieved that we were able to do that with Rogue One, especially since it was kind of a companion piece to the original movie that started it all. We were kind of like building the extension onto this legendary piece of architecture. And, if you build an ugly extension, it's kind of going to reflect poorly on that beautiful piece of architecture forever. But so I'm very, very fortunate that you can actually watch both movies back to back, almost like 1 4-hour film, and it actually works really, really great.
Yeah, in fact, I enjoyed Rogue One better than many other more recent Star Wars films, as I mentioned earlier. So it's certainly a compliment to the series. All right, Garry, so let's talk tech. This is a show about technology. So what do you rely on personally and professionally?
You mean in terms of technology? Let's see. I'm a Mac guy through and through. I started off on a Mac. I still have my old Mac SE here from 1988, the old kind of like beige tube television model, and it actually still posts. It still boots up and has some of my early writing on it. And I kind of keep that here in my office as kind of a museum piece. When I was editing PC Gamer, I was very much a PC gamer, a PC guy, and I had a PC rig. And I remember one time the hard drive died, and I lost a lot of work. And I just remember thinking, I'm done with PCs, just done with them forever. And I went back to being a Mac guy. So it's all Macs in the house. I write on an iMac. I have iPhone, iPads, Apple TVs all throughout the house. I love the fact that they all kind of talk to one another. And again, even though I consider myself a relatively tech savvy guy, I don't really enjoy getting under the hood of computers. I don't need to get in there and tweak for performance. As a writer, I generally don't need a lot of compute power. This iMac that is on my desk here right now is way more powerful than I would ever need it to be. I don't do 3D rendering or kind of photo retouching or anything like that. My main programs are essentially various forms of word processors, a web browser, email, Twitter. That's pretty much it.
Do you need a physical keyboard to write screenplays?
Yeah, you asking me if I could write a screenplay on an iPad keyboard, like a touch keyboard?
Do you wherever inspiration strikes, or are you more nope?
I mean, there are definitely times when I will wake up in the middle of the night and have an idea for a line of dialogue or a log line for a movie or something, and I'll just tap it out on my iPhone keyboard. If I were to do long form writing, like writing a novel or writing a screenplay, even on an iPad, I'd probably want to plug a Bluetooth keyboard into it, because Steve Jobs was right. Our thumbs did learn, and we became very adept at typing away on iPhone keyboards very, very quickly. But it's still not the ideal way to do it. I'm very old school. I grew up with a manual typewriter, then an electric one. I remember it was still when corrector ribbons came in. That was a huge deal. Oh my God, I can actually kind of hit backspace and erase a few letters. That was pretty advanced word processing back in the late 80s when I first started in video game magazines. So I still like the kind of the clicky clack feel of the keys. At one point, I believe I actually downloaded an app that made the old-fashioned kind of manual typewriter sounds on my keyboard, and even had the kind of the bell for the carriage return when you hit enter.
Speaking of apps, I'm assuming you're an iPhone user, and if so, what are your favorite apps? Are there any good screenplay writing apps that you could recommend as well?
So for the iPhone, there's not much that I do on it professionally. My iPhone is mostly a content consumption device. I do my emails on it. I do my web browsing on it. I'm very out there, very visible on social media, so my Twitter and Facebook are on there as well. But beyond that, I don't really do a lot of creation on my iPhone or even on my iPad. It's mostly done on my Mac. I have a 27-inch iMac that sits here on my desk. It's, again, more than I need, but I like having all the screen real estate. And then one of those little super skinny 12-inch MacBooks that I use when I'm on the go.
We'll continue chatting with Garry Whitta after this short break. You're listening to Tech It Out on the Radio America Network, powered by ASUS, for those in search of incredible. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Want to follow Mark? Google him. Mark with a C and Saltzman with a Z. Breaking down geek speak into street speak. This is Tech It Out. Tech It Out with technology columnist, author, and TV personality Mark Saltzman.
What a privilege to have on the show movie screenwriter Garry Whitta, who I used to write for when he was a PC Gamer magazine editor. Wow. Okay, so Garry has written or co-written such films as The Book of Eli, After Earth, and Star Wars Rogue One, believe it or not. This is a tech show, though, so before the break, Garry, you told me what gear you use and what you don't use to write screenplays, and now let's talk about apps that you would recommend for budding screenplay writers.
For screenwriting apps, I A lot of people ask me about Final Draft. That's kind of considered the industry standard, but I feel like it's one of those things where it's the industry standard just because it always has been and no one's ever really questioned it. I don't think it's a particularly good app. It's not very well supported. It's very expensive. It's very restrictive in the way you're allowed to use it. Tech support and customer support's not great, and it crashes a lot. So people use Final Draft because you're often expected to turn in what's called an FDX file when you deliver your scripts. But I actually use a program called Fade In. I think if you Google Fade In or Fade In software, it will take you right to it. It's a far superior piece of software in my mind, and it will export when you're done to Final Draft, and no one will know the difference. When I turn in my Final Draft, my FDX file, people think I wrote it in Final Draft, but in fact I wrote it in Fade In and just did an export at the end.
Oh, good tip. Good to know. Do you ever use your voice to dictate screenplays? I know you said you like the clickety-clack of a keyboard, but do you ever talk?
No, I feel like I would lose my voice really quick. I mean, as much as I like the sound of my own voice, I feel like I would become very self-conscious and self-aware writing like that. When people often ask me, like, what do I like play music when I write? Like, what kind of ambience do I create when I'm trying to write? There's kind of the the romantic idea of the writer kind of tapping away at the keyboard with classical music or something playing. I prefer to have complete silence. I make playlists of songs and pieces of orchestral soundtrack music that put me in the mood for the thing that I'm writing. When I'm not writing, like if I'm in the shower and if I'm driving, I often have a little speaker playing music that puts me in the mood and keeps me in the mindset of the piece that I'm working. If it's a sci-fi piece, I'll listen to kind of science fiction music. If it's a fantasy piece, I might listen to music that's more appropriate for that. But when I'm writing, I just generally I mute everything to zero and I prefer to write in as close to complete silence as possible.
Interesting. All right. That's good to know. I thought that maybe with voice dictation getting more and more accurate that you may dabble into that, but it sounds like it's
getting better. It's getting better, but voice dictation is like is like self-driving cars. It's one of those things that you need to know it's not going to make any mistakes before you're really comfortable doing it.
Before we wrap up, what are you cooking up next? Can you share with us if you're working on a big film or are you working on any new games?
So the last couple of things that I wrote that are publicly known and announced were two movies, one for 20th Century Fox called Mouse Guard and another one for Studio Canal called The War Magician. Both very, very different movies. One is an adaptation of a series of comic books about essentially kind of what if Jedi Knights were mice. And they are kind of these kind of knights of the round table whose job it is to kind of protect the smallest creatures of the forest from predators. And they kind of wear armor and they have swords and shields. And it's just this really, really cool world that the writer and artist David Peterson created. And I wrote a live action CG feature adaptation of that for 20th Century Fox. And then The War Magician is actually the true story of a magician in the 1940s, a guy called Jasper Maskelyne, who took everything that he knew about conducting illusions on stage, how to make things disappear and how to misdirect an audience's attention, and actually applied that to battlefield and combat and found ways to make tanks disappear in the middle of the desert and make the Suez Canal disappear so that German bombers couldn't find it at night, and did all these kind of crazy things that actually helped win the war. And it's a very fascinating story, and Benedict Cumberbatch is attached to play Jasper in the movie that we're making. Oh, wow. And I'm hoping we'll get to make it. It's a really amazing story.
That's amazing. I guess with all of this work, you don't have a lot of time to play games anymore.
Oh, you'd be surprised.
Well, I follow you on social media, and you do tweet the odd comment about a game you're playing or on something on Facebook you'll share, but I didn't know if you were just keeping up with your old, PC gamer pals.
A little bit of both. I mean, I still have all the consoles. I still like to play the games. And you have to remember, a lot of video games and a lot of films these days are, the line is blurring between the two. Games are becoming more and more cinematic, and they're telling better and better stories. So I've done a lot of my storytelling work has actually been either in writing stories for video games or taking video games and trying to find a way to adapt them into movies. So I still get to write games off on my taxes because I have a professional interest in keeping up on the latest games. But what am I playing right now? I'm playing on PlayStation. I'm playing a game called Detroit Beyond Human, which is a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. And they just released the next generation DLC for Star Trek Bridge Crew VR, which I love. It's the game that kind of puts you in virtual reality on the bridge of the Enterprise, and it's just the most amazing thing. It feels like you're really there.
Yeah, awesome. I had George Takei on last week's show, so I'm a big Star Trek fan myself. Maybe you'll write, Gary, the first breakthrough VR game, the killer app that will make us all run out and buy VR, because I know it's still early days for that medium, but we're all still waiting for the Grand Theft Auto, if you will. I know,
or the World of Warcraft. I think what it's going to take is like some kind of MMO, like a persistent world that you can just disappear into, and the technology is not quite there yet. I remember the first time I put on an Oculus Rift headset, I was a complete believer overnight. sight. I was like, oh my God, this is the future. The technology has not progressed as fast as I hoped it would. You know, a lot of people still get motion sick or dizzy. It doesn't really feel like you're really there. It still kind of feels like you're viewing the world through kind of a scuba diving mask. You know, there's no peripheral vision, and the way that you interact with the world is not quite there yet. And you can't really move around. Like we're a long way from the holodeck, and we're a long way from Ready Player One. But I do think we'll get there.
All right, Garry, where can our listeners learn more about you and follow your work?
Easiest way to do that is on Twitter, at Garry Whitta, so at GarryWhitta. You can also find me on Facebook, but I don't post as much there. Twitter is really the easiest way to find me.
Okay, Garry, thanks so much for your time. I occupied a lot of it, but it was a very insightful chat, and I wish you continued success in your career.
Thanks a lot.
All right, cheers. All right, we have two more guests coming up on this week's Tech It Out, but I do want to spend a moment to talk about an invaluable partner of mine on Tech It Out, and that's SanDisk. You know, we're capturing more content than ever before, whether it's on smartphones, drones, action cams, or tablets. And so we need an easy and reliable way to capture, preserve, access, and share it all. With a complete portfolio of mobile storage solutions to back up all of your precious memories, SanDisk offers removable storage cards, high-performance USB flash drives, and portable SSDs for your photos, high-res media, music, and personal files. Personally, whenever I use memory cards and USB drives to protect my digital content, which is often, I only trust my important files with SanDisk. Head over to sandisk.com to learn more about how their solutions help you keep up with the demands of today's mobile-centric lifestyle. Hey, we're going to be back shortly with more Tech It Out when we learn about a new high-tech leash for your dog walking. It's called Nitey Leash, and you'll find out why. And after that, we'll learn about a brand new service called Tankee. This is a video streaming platform, first for iPad, and designed for kids who love watching game-related videos, video game-related videos, but for moms and dads who do not want their kids on YouTube and other streaming sites because of mature content there. So we'll learn about that shortly. So a lot more coming up on this week's Tech It Out. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Breaking down geek speak into street speak. Tech It Out, hosted by Mark Saltzman.
Welcome back to Tech It Out. If you're a dog owner who walks their furry friend at night, well, you're going to love this next interview, as it's about the world's first dog leash that lights up completely from tip to tail, pardon the pun, making you more visible to traffic and other dog owners. It's aptly named Nitey Leash. And joining us on the line to discuss is Joseph Hassan. He's the president of Nitey Leash. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's talk about Nitey Leash. At a high level, tell us what this invention does.
Sure. Very, very simply, Nitey Leash is a dog leash that lights up completely from end to end. Makes you visible from a quarter of a mile away when you're walking your dog at nighttime, so you can be seen by traffic, seen by cars.
Oh, it's a great idea. Is it LED?
Thanks.
Is it LED lights? And it's flexible somehow? Like, is that how it works?
Yeah. Well, it's actually, there's one LED light. What's unique about our product is actually that we use a combination of LED and fiber optic. So the length of the leash is actually made out of a fiber optic tube, which is very flexible, and it conducts light that is transmitted by a powerful LED in the handle of the leash.
And is there a reason why you invented it? Often we hear, whenever somebody comes up with an idea, it's because of a problem that they once had.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was actually my friend Betty. My friend Betty was running at nighttime with her dog Comet. She was actually training for the Marine Corps marathon in D.C., and they were training at nighttime, and they were almost hit by a car. So she and Comet had to dive into the bushes and had a really close call. Mm-hmm. So that was where the initial idea came from, and we realized then that this is a common problem. It's a big safety issue, and it's something that applies to really everyone who has a dog. We have friends, family members, loved ones out there who are millions of people really all over the country who are walking their dogs at nighttime and may or may not know that they're really, it's really difficult for cars to see them at nighttime.
Yeah, I've seen some people wear those reflective jackets that you might see a cyclist wear, but that's not for everyone. So this is, for all intents and purposes, a regular dog leash, and it has the fiber optics and the LED light in order to illuminate so that you could be seen from afar.
Absolutely. That's exactly right.
What's the length of the dog leash?
It's 5 feet long, and it has 2 modes. It has steady and blinking mode. So blinking mode to add a little bit more visibility. And yeah, I mean, other than the fact that it lights up, which is obviously it's the key feature. We hear that our customers have a Nitey Leash in their arsenal in addition to a dog leash, or some customers use it, as their normal wear and tear in and out dog leash for day and nighttime use.
I see. And with that in mind, does it consume a lot of power? Usually LEDs do not. And what kind of batteries does it take?
Yeah, actually, that's another thing that's unique to us. We're the only leash of our kind that runs on AAA batteries. So we actually tested, Mark, on about 1,000 dogs when after we initially had the idea, from French Bulldogs up to Great Danes from all across the United States. And what we found when we were asking customers what sort of features they were looking for, we talked about rechargeable, we talked about coin cell batteries, but what we found was that the ease and simplicity of AAA batteries, being able to replace them easily, find them easily, and the fact that they're inexpensive was something that people really liked, and that really won hands down. So it's just 3 AAA batteries that are really easy to replace. And if you're to use the leash every single night for about 20 minutes a night, it's about 3 months before you would need to change the battery.
Oh, yeah, that's not bad at all. And you could even go now to your local dollar store and pick up batteries as well. So
precisely.
Simple stuff.
That's right.
We're chatting with Joseph Hassan. He is the president of Nitey Leash. This is a company and product that is a leash that lights up. So for those who walk their dog at night and you want to be visible to cars and other dog owners and other pedestrians, sometimes when I've talked to inventors, Joe, they've told me that they invented it for one thing, and then they realized that there was this sort of secondary purpose or application for the technology that they never really thought of. For example, the guy who invented pop sockets, that clever thing that you connect to the back of your phone, he had it there. He invented it to wrap up his headphone cables. But people now use it to take selfies and to better hold their phone. Some use it as a little fidgety device, like, when they're a little restless, they can play with it. So those were things he never even thought of. With Nitey Leash, another application comes to me is for women who walk their dogs alone at night, want to maybe be more visible. That might be something that they like. What's your take on that?
That's a really interesting point. Yeah, I hadn't actually thought of that specifically, Mark, but that's definitely a great use case. We have heard from people that they've actually met new friends, met people on the street when they've been having conversations over Nitey Leash. So that's been something that's been sort of fun and unexpected. That it's definitely a conversation starter and a conversation piece. So. Not just safety, but also fun and community and meeting people is part of the package as well.
Awesome. There you go. All right. So it's spelled Nitey, Leash, Nitey Leash. Where is it sold and how much does it cost?
Yeah, sure. Here in the U.S., we're available at a lot of 7-Eleven stores across the country, as well as Speedway convenience stores, and also on our website, which is niteyleash.com.
And how much does it cost?
So it's $24.95 on our site, and then in our retail partners, you can get a little bit of a better deal depending on where you go. But it ranges from $16.99 up to $24.95.
Okay, NiteyLeash.com. Joe Hassan, thank you so much for your time, and good luck with this.
Thanks so much, Mark. Really appreciate it.
We'll be back momentarily on Tech It Out when we chat with Tankee about their new video streaming platform for kids. So for moms or dads who are not comfortable with their little ones on YouTube, hearing profanity, seeing sexual content, maybe some hate videos, you're going to want to hear this interview when we return. We'll be right back on Tech It Out.
Follow Mark Saltzman on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. Listen to Tech It Out whenever you want.
question for all those parents and grandparents out there in Radio Land. And no judging, I'm just curious. Do you let your kids watch YouTube unsupervised? The answer is probably yes, but you might not know that there's a ton of inappropriate content on the platform. Well, a new platform has popped up called Tankee, and it's dubbed the first safe digital destination for kids age 6 to 12 who like watching video game related videos. That's a very popular topic on other platforms. So joining us on the line to tell us all about it is Tankee's CEO, Gerald Youngblood. Welcome to the show, Gerald.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be on the show today.
Yeah, pleasure. Let's jump right in. Tell us what Tankee is all about.
Tankee is really a platform where we address a very common situation. So we have kids that were born as digital natives, and I think you actually coined the term digital immigrants for us, our generation that weren't native to these platforms. But now you have kids that are carrying around screens with them everywhere they go, and their entire life is on demand. And one of the main pieces of content that they love to watch is gaming content. And right now on the platforms that are popular, as you mentioned, there's a lot of content that's not appropriate for 6 to 12-year-olds. And so Tankee was created out of the need to create a safe space for kids to watch that gaming content. And as the dad of a 9-year-old, I deal with that every day. We really wanted to tackle that head on.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. Many a times I've walked past my 14-year-old watching a Fortnite video on YouTube, and the person who's recording, who uploaded that video, is swearing profusely. I mean, there's a lot of profanity in there, and that's just one of the things that parents may not know exists on these videos that are seemingly innocent for younger eyes and ears. So Tankee, it's spelled Tankee. What's the origination of that word, by the way?
So Tankee is actually a common phrase in esports. And so there's commonly a character who is the strongest character on the team and kind of absorbs all the damage from the opposing team. And so the tank is someone that protects the other team. And if someone is tanky in a game, that means that they're unstoppable. They're kind of the first line of defense. And so we see our platform as that first line of defense for parents and kids to keep all the bad stuff of the internet out and let all the good stuff through.
All right, that's great. So Tankee, is it a website? Is it an app?
So it's a mobile platform. So we'll launch first on iPad. We'll move on to iPhone, and then shortly thereafter we'll expand to Android as well.
Is this a curated collection of gaming? Like, how do you weed out, say, profanity or sexual content, extreme violence, any hate videos, and so on?
So we are a curated platform, and so we watch every piece of content before it goes live on Tankee. And so therefore, it's not just free user-generated content. We actually curate and seek out gamers that make these videos and make sure that it's family-friendly before it ever shows up on our platform.
Mm-hmm. We're chatting with Gerald Youngblood. He is the Tankee CEO based in Austin, Texas. This is a new app, a new platform for kids ages 6 to 12 who love watching video game-related videos, but instead of ones on YouTube, which may be more inappropriate, and other platforms, Tankee has a curated collection of videos. It's important to have the big games out there that everybody's buzzing about. Because Fortnite is one of those questionable ones, some think it's too violent, others think it's cartoony, and therefore it's more appropriate than something more realistic like a Call of Duty. Where does that game stand? And tell us about some of the popular games, like you mentioned, Rocket League or Minecraft.
So Fortnite is hugely popular, but at Tankee, we really look at making sure that we're living up to our mission of protecting the privacy and the content standards that we have for our audience. And so Fortnite is interesting in that it is extremely popular, and we're looking at it to see if there's family-friendly content that we could include on the platform. But our first priority is to make sure that all the content is safe for the 6 to 12-year-olds on the platform. So it's something we're looking at, but it is not currently on the platform.
Okay, and where can we learn more? How can we download Tankee? And is there a website where parents can learn more about the platform before they install the app on their kids' devices?
Yeah, absolutely. Please go to www.tankee.com, and that's TANKEE.com. You can follow us on Twitter at Tankee Gaming as well.
All right. Gerald Youngblood, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks everyone for listening to this week's Tech It Out. I hope you enjoyed it. And thank you one more time to my sponsor, ASUS. Check out asus.com for a look at all of their laptops, desktops, monitors, smartwatches, smartphones, and tablets. Have a great rest of your weekend, everyone. We'll speak to you next time on Tech It Out. Ciao for now.